tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima. Tuungane sote tuimbe pamoja, kuenzi shikamano hatima yetu. Tujitoe wenyewe kupambana pamoja, uhuru na umoja vitawale. Enyi bwana na binti wa Afrika, mwili wa jua, mwili wa anga, tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima. Tuungane sote na tujibidishe kutoa kilicho bora kwa Afrika. Chimbuko la wanadamu, chemchemi ya utamaduni, tumaini letu wakati wa mafarakano. Enyi bwana na binti wa Afrika, mwili wa jua, mwili wa anga, tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima.
The What I Show our viewers from different locations where you might ever, to some it's afternoon, to some it's morning, to some it's evening. We are meeting again at What I Show, where we are discussing the impact of slave trade, colonization, modern day Scramble for Africa versus Vision 2030. And before we go any further, we encourage all you, our viewers, to subscribe on our YouTube channel and Facebook pages at Humanist TV Africa, so that you won't miss any program. You can also write to us at on info@humanisttvafrica.com or WhatsApp us on the number appearing on the screen. Today on What I Saw, I am having the ZANU-PF MP for Epworth North, that is Zimbabwe, one of the constituencies in Zimbabwe. He is also the National Youth Deputy Commissar. So we are going to be reflecting on the topic together. We'll be hearing what are the thoughts of his party, which happens to be the ruling party in Zimbabwe. So in other words, we can say we are hearing the position of the Zimbabwean government on that particular topic. Though before we close, we shall also delve into some of the current affairs, probably just to hear from the honorable, the view of their party, the view of the government. Honorable, I want you to introduce yourselves the best way you want to be known by the viewers. Over to you.
Thank you so much, my brother, and thanks so much for hosting me. I am Comrade Taurai Kandishaya, the ZANU-PF Epworth North Constituency Member of Parliament, and also the Deputy National Political Commissar in ZANU-PF Youth League, and also a Pan-Africanist.
Hello. Thank you
Yes.
very much for the introduction. And let us go into our topic today. Um,
Mm.
as a young person in the ruling ZANU-PF, who is also a Zimbabwean, when you hear about slave trade, when you hear about colonization, what comes to your mind?
Well, thank you, my brother. When I hear the words slave trade, I think of the worst degree of abuse and exploitation by the Westerns when they used to come here to collect Africans specifically for trade. They were selling labor. They collect Africans here, load them in huge ships, transport them to their countries and sell them. That was an admission that they cannot do it themselves. They can't work themselves. They can't produce anything for themselves. And it was an admission that Africans are better and stronger than them. But the way that they were doing it, it was so bad. And today we even have our brothers and sisters who are still on the western side as a result of slave trade. And when the world reacted angrily to the slave trade and called for abolishment of slave trade, that is when they changed the concept to now colonization. During slave trade, they were taking us from Africa to sell us to their countries for cheap or free labor. Now, when it comes to colonization, they then came to Africa, occupied our land, then started to exploit that cheap or free labor while listed in Africa. So it was the continuity of slave trade. But because there are individuals who had made huge profits of money during slave trade, they had to invest the money as a way to cleanse the money. Now we call it money laundering. So they were now financing colonization of Africa to make sure they do not only, take Africans for labor, but they also loot minerals that are being mined by Africans. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. And what's your take on the role of our traditional leaders? We know during the colonization era and the slave trade era, we had leaders who actually connived with those Western guys. For example, chief, they would say they would use to sell slaves. Even sometimes we hear that some chiefs authorized the colonization. What word do you have for such people who actually facilitated the slave trade and facilitated the colonization of their fellow brothers and also themselves? Because when the land is colonized, when you're a chief, you're also colonized.
Well, I must admit that at every stage of life, there are sellouts, there are those that betray. But that is not the major focus of the present day situation with regards to the colonial legacies. The truth of the matter is that it is the whites who were employing tactics and strategies to occupy our land. They divided people because when there is disunity, it becomes easy to be exploited. It becomes easy, to be used. It becomes easy to be defeated. You can easily be collapsed when you are not united. That's why you see the motto of ZANU-PF says unity, peace, and development. It means there must be unity of purpose. When people are focused in one direction, they have results. In the present day, we also have the sellouts, people who are betraying. Those that goes to America asking for sanctions. Maybe it was the same arrangement, but what we need to focus on are the effects of colonization and the intention by the Westerns to extend colonization by applying, imperialism and neo-colonialism, tactics. That is what we should be asking. What are we supposed to do as Africans? Where are we supposed to go? We have the resources. We have the manpower. We have the expertise. We have the skills. We have the knowledge. But the Westerners are still undermining Africa. What are we supposed to do? The best way forward is for Africa to believe in themselves. We need not to forget the past. But what we need to do is to focus more on where we are going. What do we intend to do? How best can we be independent economies? How best can we add value to the minerals that we have? Because the scramble, the present day scramble of Africa, neocolonialism by these imperialist regimes, is meant to undermine and to suffocate the success of a black person. So what do we need to do? We need to minimize importation of raw materials. Let's also import finished products, value addition and beneficiation, to make sure that the governments in our country are not imposed or are not funded by the Westerns. Because whenever they fund a government, the government will not serve the interests of an African. That government will serve the interests of the handlers. So we must do away with the puppet governments. We must do away with the puppet opposition parties. We must do away with the general belief that solutions comes from the Western side. Problems of Africa can only be solved by Africans in an African way.
Thank you very much. And we can all agree today that colonization and slave trade were evil. And I think the Anglican Church had actually recently, last year, put aside 100 million to compensate the role they played in slave trade. So, as the party ZANU-PF and as the government of Zimbabwe, have you ever tried to seek justice? For example, West Africa has been subjected to slave trade for 400 years, and for Zimbabwe, it has been subjected to colonization for 90 years. This translates to the fact that Zimbabwe is old 90 years of reparations, and also Western Africa old 400 years of reparations. As the government and party, has ever tried to force these colonizers and these beneficiaries of slave trade to pay back what they benefited from those unjust and injustices?
Well, according to the promise that we made to the electorate during the 2023 elections, as was the situation from 1980, we promised our people continued self-rule. We promise our people that we shall sustain our independence, safeguard our territorial integrity, and uphold our sovereignty. The only way forward, the best way forward is to continue with our independence and to make sure that we do not allow imperialism to take charge. We do not allow neocolonialism to take charge. In as much as we had 90 years of colonization, that was a loss, 90 years of lost dignity, 90 years of lost personality, 90 years of being under oppression. Finally, we have our independence. What do we need to do? We need to make sure that the resources of Africa are benefiting Africans. The biggest mining company in Africa must be owned by an African. The richest man in an African land must be an African. The most celebrated musician in Africa must be an African. The most viewed video in Africa must be by an African. If we move with that pace, we will be able to recover the lost 90 years, the lost 400 years. What we need now, we do not need to live to survive in isolation. We are now moving to issues of economic diplomacy. Like the case in Zimbabwe, there is re-engagement and engagement. We were enemies yesterday. Let's be friends today. The friendship should be based on a win-win situation. No exploitation, no bullying, no colonization, no looting. That's why you see in Zimbabwe, we are focusing much on the East, look East policy. Why? Because the Chinese do not colonize. They table a win-win deal. If you look at it, they now have the Build Road Initiative, the BRI. They are building airports, they are building roads. They are helping countries to improve infrastructure for the benefit of trade, not for the purposes of wanting to loot. But look at the Americans. They've now introduced the B3W, Bring Back Better World, as a counter to the BRI. Look at the European Union. They've now introduced the Global Gateway, GG, as a counter. But we know as Africans, from the colonial legacies, you cannot trust an American policy. You cannot trust a European policies because we still have bleeding wounds. So instead of focusing on, say, compensators, we want money, we want to recover. What we are doing is to build our continent, to build our countries using our own resources so that we continue being independent. Otherwise, we may lose it trying to recover what we lost already. By trying to recover the things that we lost, we may lose things that we are holding currently. We may lose our sovereignties. We may lose our independences. For now, we need to focus on building Africa. For now, we need to focus on adding value to our resources. We know that if we start to export mineral finished products, as opposed to the idea of exporting raw materials, they will suffer. And they will come on table on our terms, not with their terms.
Exactly. From the time of slave trade into colonization up to modern day, we can actually see that the world cannot move without Africa. And you said moving from slave trade to colonization, it was just a transition. I would also want to challenge you that don't you think that what even European countries are doing currently is also part of the imperial agenda, where they would levy, for example, United States Africa Summit. Last week there was Italy Africa Summit, where European countries, they would invite all African states. They would treat Africa as a single country. They would invite them to come and negotiate with them. Like last week, I think there was a summit in Italy, the first one. And I think that is what we can call modern day Scramble of Africa. I think every country is doing that, including the Eastern friends. You have mentioned the likes of Chinese. And I think even the Russians are doing the same, the Americans are doing the same, the British are doing the same, now the Italians are doing the same. And I think the French are doing the same with their former colonies, the Francophones. So, don't you think this is the form of colonization, or this is the form of pushing the imperial agenda? Why can't African states tell those countries to come and negotiate here in Africa? Why should African states, why should African heads of states go to Italy, go to United States, and go to United Kingdom to go and meet there? Do you think if I called you, Honorable Kandishaya, at my house to negotiate a deal, don't you think you are compromised by the fact that I'm the hosting person?
Thank you so much, my brother. As I said earlier on, that we are much focused on economic diplomacy. The truth of the matter, especially in the case of Zimbabwe, is that Zimbabwe will never be a colony again. If you see us going out there, going as far as Italy, as far as United States, America, Davos, we are not going there to be colonized. All that we are looking for are honest and sincere investors. And you agree with me that in the case of Zimbabwe, you have been seeing investors coming to Zimbabwe to genuinely invest. Because the Americans, the Europeans have discovered now that they need Zimbabwe more than Zimbabwe needs them. So we go there. Why do we go there? Because those are the capital, you know, the capital economies, where you get the bigger business institutions that are willing to invest sincerely. And you know that capital goes where it feels safe. So when we go there, it's more of an exhibition. We are not going there to say, come and loot. We are saying, come for these opportunities. And from that, in as much as we may need to say, no, we must invite them, we must do this and that and that. You know, in diplomacy, you negotiate. Africa is developing, and these guys are developed. But you remember well that at one point, these guys were coming here to Africa. So for now, we need to go there, negotiate, attract investors. When investors come, we tell them the laws of the land are like this. There's no cheap labor here. There's no free labor here. There's no exploitation of labor here. There's no exploitation of resources. No to importation of raw materials. If it's about mining, you want to open a lithium mine, thanks so much, it's fine. But you must construct within such period a refinery, laboratory. We want you to manufacture batteries from Zimbabwe. Not the habit of coming, you mine, you export raw materials, you loot, you go. You also need to develop surrounding areas. So there's nothing much. Pan-Africanism must not be an act of extremism, to the extent that we forget that there are, financial capitals in the world from those developed countries. We go there, we negotiate. There's nothing wrong about that. All what we need is independence. What we need are functional economies with finances that have value. You look at the issue of European Union. When they
the honorable saying it's actually the honorable saying is actually not. The honorable is actually saying it's not a matter of being exploited when they're invited in Europe. Like last week, the head of states were in Italy. He said they're going there to negotiate. All right, honorable. And you mentioned about that when the investors come to Zimbabwe, you tell them this is the laws of the land. And we have our own labor laws here. But we have seen cases in Zimbabwe where videos are circulating on WhatsApp, seeing our Chinese friends probably abusing our own Zimbabwean people, probably beating them or probably making them work more than 8 hours a day. Are those allegations real, or you think they're just rumors? I think your mic is muted. All right, the mic of honorable, I think, is developing some challenges. But I was saying, what his take on the issue where in Zimbabwe we see some videos circulating on social media with allegations that Chinese are somehow abusing fellow Zimbabweans, and they're working over 8 hours per day. And I'm sure he is eager to comment on that one. And I also want to bring to your attention that we have also to discuss about the 2030 Vision 2030 mantra of the Zimbabwean government, where the Zimbabwean government has been seen going around the world through its leader, His Excellency Emerson Mnangagwa, saying Zimbabwe is open for business, and he'll be saying he's actually working towards achieving upper and middle economy by 2030, which I think the Honorable can tell us more about that vision. And I'm sure the viewers would like actually want him to say more on that one, because the problem of the vision is somehow taken as a partisan policy. So we want him to clarify what parts of that vision are partisan and what parts of that vision are national in nature. Because despite the fact that the president is coming from the ruling party, ZANU-PF, where after elections, you'll be the president for the whole country. And the honorable member of parliament was actually telling us about the motto of their political party, where he said there should be unity of purpose, there should be peace, there should be freedom. Those three words, he said, is the motto of their political party, ZANU-PF. And ZANU-PF is an acronym for Zimbabwe African National Union, a patriotic front, which is the ruling party in Zimbabwe. And it has been the ruling party since 1987. Well, it was formed in 1987, despite the fact that Zimbabwe got independence in 1980. Was in 1980 there was ZANU and PF. Then they had some misunderstandings between the Zimbabweans, but in 1987 the Zimbabweans came together as people of one nation for the sake of this country. Then that was when ZANU-PF was formed as a merger between two bigger political or rival political parties of that time. That was the ZAP, which was led by Joshua Ngomo by then, and ZANU-PF, which was led by Robert Mugabe by then. Both the two revolutionaries and freedom fighters are led. Ngomo passed away in 1999 on 1 July, and Robert Gabriel Mugabe also passed in 2019 on 6th of September. So the two guys united in 1987 to form what we call ZANU-PF today. So I just thought that it is fit to give a little bit of background of what is ZANU-PF and where did it come from, because there's misconception and there is misinformation. People they would tell you that ZANU-PF have ruled Zimbabwe since 1980. No, they didn't rule Zimbabwe since 1980, but it only came into being in 1987. So in 1980 it was PFZAP and ZANU. Those were the two major political parties, and you would hear most of the time in Zimbabwe the opposition guys would be talking about the war called the Gukura Wound, which happened in parts of Matabeleland North, Matabeleland South, Bulawayo, and parts of Midland. It was a war between those two big political parties, which was ended by the Unity Accord, which was signed in 1987, and that Unity Accord is celebrated every year on the 22nd of December. So I think this makes a bit of background, so that for those who might not be privy to facts around the governance issues in Zimbabwe, they might get the background of what we are talking about. We are talking about these two bigger political parties fighting soon after winning independence from British colonial rule. Remember, we are discussing today slave trade, colonization, modern day Scramble for Africa, and Vision 2030, as it has been put rightly by the Honorable that slave trade and colonization is somehow the same process. They just say the people were making noise that the slave trade was unjust and should not continue. Then the man which was gained through slave trade, it is said to have funded a colonization. And I think the same, the man which has been used, gained through colonization, I suggested to the Honorable that is the same man which is being used to invest into modern day Scramble for Africa, where a number of countries throughout the world are scrambling for Africa, are scrambling to get the better deals. And the Honorable said when they go to those what we call a financial capital, they will be looking forward to negotiate for a win-win situation. So whether that win-win situation is attainable or not, is a question to be answered by the different governments of African continent who are actually engaging those financial capitals. Like they were in Rome. So I think the Honorable, when he said financial capitals, like for example, African leaders were in Rome last week. So I think he was counting Rome as one of those financial capitals. That is Rome. Then there's the likes of Berlin in the case of Germany, London in the case of United Kingdom, probably New York in the case of the United States, and other capitals we can think of. Probably in the case of China, we can talk Beijing. In the case of Russia, we can talk of Moscow. And I would also want the Honorable to comment on the issue that despite the fact that he is saying unity is necessary, he said there will be always a puppet government, there will be always puppet opposition, there will be always traitors, where say it helps those who exploit the nation to have their projects done. For example, I challenged him saying the traditional leaders during slave trade and colonization were actually accomplices in the slave trade and colonization because they gave permission to those who colonized Africa. They gave permission and they even make little profits, I think, in the Western Africa, if we were to analyze it correctly. Traditional leaders got little profits by selling their fellow black people, by enslaving their fellow black people. The same with how many countries in Africa were colonized. You would find the colonizers would come with the documents. On those documents, they would ask for the signature of the African leaders so that they can go with that document to their respective leaders in the country. In the case of Britain, which happened to be the country which colonized a number of countries in Africa, and also not only in Africa, I think worldwide, over 60 countries celebrate independence every year. So which means the year has 52 years. Among those 52 years, or 50, I mean the year has 52 weeks. So among those 52 weeks, almost every week, there is a country which is celebrating independence from the British people. So you see how the empire was big, and I think that the biggest beneficiaries of colonization was at some point also the United States was also one of their colonies, and it got independence in July 1776. I think then become an all-time and all-weather friend of the United Kingdom. And I think the Honorable also has to comment on the issue of a Commonwealth, the amalgamation of a Commonwealth country. It's actually the continuation of imperialism, because those countries, they will be still under the king. Currently now the British is under the king. The Commonwealth is under the king, is under the leadership of the king. Unfortunately or fortunately, Zimbabwe left the Commonwealth in 2003 after the late former president of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Comrade Robert Gabriel Mugabe, differed with the United Kingdom, the EU, and the United States. He then decided to pull out of Commonwealth. Yes, the current president of Zimbabwe is actually trying to rejoin the Commonwealth. And I think it would be a question which you can go to the Honorable Member of Parliament, to the Youth Deputy Commissar, that are we not crying for being recolonized if we are to getting back into Commonwealth? There is an issue where also the government have been trying to compensate the white farmers who lost their land during the 2000 to 2002 land reform process in Zimbabwe. I don't know, does it not sound as the reversal of land reform to compensate them? Because in the first place, how did those white guys gain that land? They gained it through colonization. They gained it through driving away our forefathers from that land and driving them to dry land, driving them to a non-productive land, and they take the bulk of productive land. And a day ago on this same TV, we had a program which was profiling Zimbabwe. You can find it. It was hosted by one of our panelists, and Comrade Kato Mukasa from Uganda, who actually delved much into the issue of land ownership, how majority of Zimbabweans, particularly Black Zimbabweans, are still not owning the land, are still landless as Zimbabweans. As a matter of fact, yes, majority of Zimbabweans, we can say they own land, but as a matter of law, we don't own it, don't own productive land. It's just a pity that we couldn't push up to the end with the Honorable. I think he's facing some challenges because we are in a virtual studio, so I think he's facing some challenges with the network. But I'm sure you'll be glad to come back again on the program. And the next time, I would actually encourage you people to bring presents for the honorable member, and you can also bring what you want to hear. So, having said whatever we said, I think you have benefited a lot. If you think there is something we should improve, and if you think you have an idea or you want to market something, we are open for you. You can simply write to us on the email appearing on the screen and on the WhatsApp number. We are a non-profit making media house, so we give you a chance to market your ideas. We give you a chance to market justice. We give you a market and a chance to market facts. So we base on science, we base on facts, we base on logic. So that is our way of reaching to humanity as the motto of our TV station. Don't forget to subscribe so that you won't miss any show when we host it on YouTube and Facebook. Just subscribe on at Humanist TV Africa. We need your support. We are non-profit making media, but we still need your support through subscription, through following our programs. And I thank you all, the viewers, for being with us. For now, it's bye-bye from your host of What I Saw, Prawiyatinama.
tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima. Tuungane sote tuimbe pamoja, kuenzi shikamano hatima yetu. Tujitoe wenyewe kupambana pamoja, uhuru na umoja vitawale. Enyi bwana na binti wa Afrika, mwili wa jua, mwili wa anga, tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima. Tuungane sote na tujibidishe kutoa kilicho bora kwa Afrika. Chimbuko la wanadamu, chemchemi ya utamaduni, tumaini letu wakati wa mafarakano.